Yes. This is from a colleague from Beijing. This is Liu Xun. Sorry for the pronunciation. I try my best. And this is about the mechanisms of cognitive control in conflict processing. Yes, thank you. Or can we?
My slide showing okay? Okay. Thanks, Bernard, for the invitation to present our research in this symposium. Today, I'm going to talk about the mechanism of cognitive control in conflict processing. I'm from the Institute of Psychology, Chinese Academy of Sciences, and I am also affiliated with Department of Psychology, University of Chinese Academy of Sciences. So for cognitive control, it is defined as the ability to orchestrate thoughts and actions in accordance with internal goals by a couple of researchers. And it is very important in terms of the functions because it's related to a lot of higher order as well as perceptual and action control, for example, attention, emotion, language, and decision. And also, according to the cognitive atlas, the definition and taxonomy of cognitive control encompose a lot of concepts such as performance monitoring, goal switching, goal selection, task switching, etc. And we also categorize cognitive control into 5 different domains, such as selective attention, conflict control, working memory, conflict flexibility, and inhibition control. Each are represented by some classic paradigm. So in our lab, we are mostly interested in the stimulus response compatibility test. And this slide shows 4 classical SRC paradigm such as Xu, Simon, and Erickson, Blanker, and Navon global priority. In each of the SRC tasks, there's a stimulus dimension as well as response to each stimulus dimensions. And usually in this task, there are 3 conditions: incongruent condition, neutral condition, and congruent condition. The typical finding are represented by 2 very robust effects. One is called the SRC effect. Typically, the difference between the incongruent and the congruent condition, people show faster reaction time and higher accuracy for the congruent condition in comparison to the incongruent condition. There's another effect called the conflict adaptation, typically refer to the conflict, the sequential effect of the previous trial on the current trial. So if the previous trial is an incongruent trial, and it will facilitate the conflict resolution in the current trial, so that it will reduce the SRC effect in the current trial. So that's a typical trumpet kind of a pattern for the reaction time. And the SRC effect, there's a lot of SRC paradigms. And in the 1990, the University of Michigan professor Komplon proposed a taxonomy of the SRC task called the dimensional overlap framework. It categorized different SRC tasks by the type of the conflict rising from different overlapping dimensions. For example, in the Erickson-Blanker task, we mostly reflect a stimulus level conflict between the target and the flanker. And the Simon task mostly involved the response SR kind of a conflict. But the verbal color naming stoop effect usually involve all three types of overlapping conflict. And in terms of the theory to explain the patterns of the phenomena of the cognitive control, that I'm listing three representing theory here, but there's a lot of many theories out there. So the Posner and colleagues, Jin Fan, proposed the three-component network, alerting, orienting, and exact control network, which is in charge of different aspects of the cognitive control. And Kobeta and colleagues proposed the dorsal and the ventral attention control network. And Agner, on the basis of the Bud Werniger and Cohen proposed the right side of the network, basically focusing on the conflict detection and conflict resolution. And we are also interested in the majority of the cognitive control in conflict processing. For example, based on the Cohn-Braun dimensional overlap framework, we proposed that because of the separation between the stimulus and the stimulus response kind of conflict, people may processing these two types of conflict differently, as well as adopting the same kind of exact control module to resolve the conflict based on this is adapted from the Agner's generality and specific framework. We propose that it may the conflict detection may be specific for each type of conflict, SS and SR, but the exact control was universal to resolve these two types of conflict. So to investigate these specific questions, we adopted a couple of logic to find evidence. The first is the parallel comparison, and we can also use correlation between the performance in the stimulus and the stimulus response conflict within individuals. We can also use the competition for resource so that if both conflicts are together at the same times, they may interact with each other if they are domain general and showing a super additive effect. If they are independent, then they would not interact with each other. And then last is the transfer across domain. So if two type of conflict resolve relying on the same mechanism, then they would show a cross-domain conflict adaptation effect. Otherwise, they would not show conflict adaptation across different type of conflict. So firstly, in 2004, we did a neuroimaging study to compare the stimulus and the stimulus response conflict by comparing the Simon effect and the Stroop effect, spatial Stroop effect in the same task. So basically, people are required to respond to the upward and left, downward arrow by pressing left and right buttons. So if once they acquire the mapping during the task, if the stimulus is showing on the left and the right, that's the typical Simon effect. If the arrows show top and bottom, that's the spatial Stroop effect. And each representing the stimulus and the stimulus response. We observed both type of conflict effect, SRC effect, in the Simon effect and in the Stroop effect. And in terms of the brain activations, we found that there's a common activation in the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, but they're also showing different specific activations for the SS and SRs type of conflict. And later on, based on this reasoning, we did some meta-analysis to do the comparison between the SS and SR conflict in the neuroimaging study. After screening, we included 111 neuroimaging studies. They're all including the SS and SR type of conflict. And we found that there's a frontal parietal network are common to all the conflict resolution and kind of a task, including SMA and insula, and as well as dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, and the IPC, IPS, intraparietal sulcus. But also, confirming our hypothesis that there are also some specific activation for the SR type of conflict and also SS conflict. And the common activation actually showing in the insula and SMA and some prefrontal cortex. And in this slide, we summarize also the conflict processing, cognitive control in conflict processing related ERP component, mostly involving N2 and N450, usually observed in the Stroop effect, and P300, also called P3 and LPC. And in our next line of study, we use the transfer of cognitive control logic to study the within domain and across domain conflict resolution. This is the same paradigm as we used in the 2004, and we specifically interested in the sequential effect of the SRC. And we found that across trial, if they are within dimensional overlap domain, so meaning that the previous and the current trial are of the same type of conflict, SS or SR, they will show the typical conflict adaptation effect, atypic like patterns of the reaction time. But if they are cross-dimensional overlap domain, these two lines are parallel, showing no conflict adaptation, meaning that the processing of these two types of conflict are relatively independent. We also observe the same pattern in the N2 amplitude, that within the domain transfer, they show a N2 amplitude adaptation effect. Across domain, there's no conflict adaptation effect for the N2 component. And later on, we are also interested in across modality, visual and auditory modality, whether the conflict resolution can transfer. And so we developed the cross-model kind of a Stroop and Simon effect. This is the Stroop effect I'm showing here, that we saw that when the previous and the current trial are from the same modality, we see we call the modality repetition. They show a typical conflict adaptation effect. If they alternate, the trials alternate across modalities, they show no conflict adaptation effect. The same patterns were observed in the P300 amplitude of the ERP component. So then we are also interested in the oscillation of the neural activities. And I will summarize before I delve into our own research. I will briefly summarize this line of research in the cognitive control. So typically, the increase in the theta power indicate the increase in demand of cognitive control. And we saw the synchronization of the theta phase represents the communication across different areas. And using the 2-to-1 mapping flanker task, researchers found that the they can induce both SS and SR conflict. And these two type of conflict all both increase the middle frontal theta band. And another group of research using different paradigm, using the 4-to-1 mapping blanket test to induce the SR conflict. They also found that these two type of conflict both increase the middle frontal theta power. And these two conflict also both decrease the, this is the increase of the theta power in the frontal region, middle frontal region. And they also decrease the parietal theta power. And in another paper, this group of research using another paradigm, they also found that the SR conflict increased middle frontal theta power, but the SS conflict decreased the theta power in the posterior brain regions. And this is from a search group using this kind of dot singleton shape perception test. And they found that the motor conflict increases the middle frontal theta power. And the motor in the motor also the synchronization of the theta power between the middle frontal and the frontal parietal areas are increased in the presence of the motor conflict. So in summary, middle frontal theta is sensitive to both SS and SR conflict, and sometimes it only responds to the SR conflict in some research lab. And the resolution of SS conflict is related to the selective processing of visual stimuli, usually taking place at the posterior parietal and the visual area. But the resolution of the SR conflict is accompanied by the increased functional connectivity of theta band across middle and the lateral frontal and motor areas. So to study the neural oscillation, usually we are interested in different stages of cognitive control in the Stroop task, and a lot of research is using the 2-to-1 mapping task to separate the semantic conflict or stimulus incongruency from the response incongruency. So for example, the blue and the red mapped to the left button and the yellow and the blue mapped to the right button. And it will create the semantic stimulus incongruent SI condition and also response incongruent RI condition. They all can be compared to the congruent condition. But using the visual auditory Stroop task in the SS and the SR conflict has some advantages, because SS conflict comes also from two separate visual and auditory modalities, which are mapped to different internal semantic destinations. These create a matched comparison to those from the SR conflict, in which two separate responses are mapped to different internal semantic representations. So in our studies, we use the visual auditory Stroop task 2-to-1 mapping task to study the neural oscillation. And we found that significant effect in both SS and SR conflict. But these two show different patterns with fast and slow beam reaction time. So basically, we sorted the reaction time into the fast and the slow beam, and we then separately calculate the SS type of conflict and the SR type of conflict. And for the ERP results, we observed the frontal central the kind of N450 amplitude difference. The red line is the response incongruency. Blue line is the stimulus incongruency. And it showed a graded response in the N450 component for the frontal. And for the P300 at the parietal regions, it also show a graded amplitude across three conditions. And for the neural oscillation, we calculate the theta band power, and we found that for the SR conflict, it increases the middle frontal theta band between the RI and SI contrast condition. And we then analyze the functional connectivity between the middle frontal MFC region and the left lateral frontal regions. And we found that SR conflict increases synchronization of theta phase between the MFC and the lateral frontal area, and also between the MFC and the motor area. And also, the larger the behavioral effect between the RI and SI difference, the stronger the coupling between the MFC and the motor area. And we also look at the opposite, the other aspect is the visual test. When the visual aspect of the stimuli are task related, and we also found significant effect in both SS and SR conflict. Similar pattern with when the visual modality is task relevant. But a little bit different for the ERP results, that SS conflict increased in the middle frontal N2 component, N2 magnitude, but the SR conflict only increases in the N450 parietal region. The theta band also show increase in the SS conflict in the middle frontal regions, but does not result in significant changes in the functional connectivity between the middle frontal region and other area of the brain. So in summary, cross-model SS and SR conflict processing relies on both domain general and the specific temporal neural responses. And for the specific patterns, conflict monitoring SS conflict usually causes middle frontal N450 and N2, but the SR conflict causes posterior parietal N450. But they also show common neural activities. For example, they both rely on similar attentional allocation indexed by the pre-300. And across cross-model SS and SR conflict processing also showed distinct theta band oscillation patterns. And besides the neural oscillation, we also noticed that in the literature, there are a couple of labs doing the finding the behavior oscillation in the perception and attention. For example, the mental processes in the behavior response show periodical rhythmic changes. And people proposed that the rhythmic neural oscillation within brain modulate perception and attention. For example, in both human and monkeys, they show acute target the changes in the HR percentage oscillate across a Q target interval. So the related series of behavior oscillation propose that our perceptual unit usually sampling the environment at the alpha rhythm, but our higher order brain regions performing attentional kind of focusing or attentional sampling have a different attentional rhythm at the theta band. So basically, the theta band oscillation reflect the modulation of the higher order brain region to the perceptual and motor output. So in this case, attentional sampling of two objects shows theta band oscillations. in this kind of a paradigm, and the theta oscillation is achieved via rhythmic inhibition of alpha activities between two locations. And attentional sampling of two features can also show theta oscillation. And this theta oscillation can be observed in behavior responses as well. So across literature, attention samples the environment with theta band or alpha rhythm, but this rhythmic sampling is observed in a lot of domains, including vision, audition, and as well as visual motor model processing. And these two literatures just are examples of the cued location rhythmic response and the set prediction of the perception also show the theta oscillation. So in our behavior oscillation study, we also use a cross-model Stroop effect, visual auditory Stroop effect with the same paradigm of the 2-to-1 mapping. And we basically change the SOA at the steps of 16.67 millisecond from negative 200 millisecond to the positive 200 millisecond SOA, whether the visual or precede auditory or visual following auditory presentation of the stimuli. And we found that our reaction time showed a rhythmic for the task. And after doing the analysis, we can extract the theta band activation in the behavior patterns, in showing that the three conditions differs within the theta band oscillation. And this is after the difference of this trending of the raw reaction time, and we further extracted the theta band, and we compared the group between the different conditions, and we found that there's a theta band difference between the RI and SI conditions. So this is for the auditory task, and for the visual task, similar analysis was performed, and typically similar pattern were observed, but a little bit different between the visual and the auditory modalities. We found that whether the theta band is sensitive to SS and SR conflict depending on the task modality. For example, this is attending to the auditory stimuli, and this is to the visual stimuli. And but when people attending to the auditory stimuli, the RI is the most prominent, show most prominent theta band. But when people attend to the visual stimuli, the SI conditions show the most prominent theta band activation. So cognitive control processing exclude theta oscillation also at the behavior level. This theta oscillation directly modulate the magnitude of cross-model stimulus conflict and response conflict. So that's the end of my talk, and this line of research are based on partly on the PhD thesis of 3 students. They are all graduated and actively doing this line of research in their separate institutions. And this part of line of research was founded by the Natural Science Foundation, as well as in collaboration with DFG in cross-country Sino-German cross-country project, cross-model learning, adaptivity, prediction, and interaction. Thank you very much.
Fantastic, thank you. So I think is there an urgent question somewhere in or outside of the room?